Right, so here we are. This is me and Darren. My name's Pete Cook, and we met in Pearson Park in Hull a few weeks ago. And we were both collecting litter. Now, you might not think that's going to be a very interesting story, but the science story behind that is mind-blowing, is it not?
Yeah. I still struggle to understand the enormity of in the chance of meeting you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a big science story, but it's going to change the way that humanity lives in the future. Now, that seems a ridiculous thing to say, but once you see the science and the logic, it's just going to change the way that people live forever. And it never goes back, because once you've seen how the magic trick is done, that's it. So here's the science story. I was working on jet aircraft engines 30 years ago. And the biggest problem inside engines is turbulence. Now, you might think, well, why is that a problem? And the fact is that turbulence is not described by any physics at all. So that's a big problem for science, a base problem. So Darren and I are going to ask you to stick with your own sense of logic. We can prove things to you by showing you books like this, which in there it will state very, very clearly that turbulence is not described by any physics. Now, there's lots of wonderful BBC programs which are basically shams of science, because the solar system is a very accurate clock. And people like Brian Cox imply constantly that the clock is all explained by the physics. Well, the only physics you've got is gravity, which holds it together and makes it move. So all you've got is the battery. What about the mechanism of the clock? A self-assembling, a self-organizing clock. Where's the watchmaker? So we're going to tell you where that watchmaker is and how it comes about, and it doesn't need any outside interference. But what we're going to have to admit first is the way that we teach science in universities is deeply flawed, because the university separates the science out into different departments, and reality doesn't work in different departments, it all works together. But there is no university on the earth which has a department which is actually looking for the link between all the departments. So people say, oh, the biggest problem in science is dark matter or something exotic like that. It's not. It's the fact that the science we have at the minute is complete nonsense. The science in all the departments is correct, but if that science is all ordered and correct, then surely there must be an explanation of how all the departments fit together. Now, the problem with being human is that we are hardwired to copy and conform, and not to think about problems like the fact that universities don't reflect reality. So, but copy and conform, where does that come from? Well, we have to be sociable because we don't have any natural weapons. So unless we work in groups, the other animals in our early ancestry would just have done away with us. But working in groups means that we're more efficient. So let's tell the story of how finding out how turbulence works puts the universes back together. So is it fair to say, Darren, that as a description of turbulence, if we just say it's unpredictable, that defines it?
From what I learned, from what I've learned now, no, it's not. It's not correct, is it?
That turbulence, if we define it as simply the unpredictable behavior of matter, or one kind of unpredictable behavior of matter, then we've separated it from physics, especially classical physics, which is the predictable behavior of matter. So that they're different. We've defined them as different.
Right.
Now, I've sent you a map which shows that under modern thinking, people try and push chaos into classical physics.
Yeah.
That's got to be wrong, because classical physics
Right.
is by definition predictable. Chaos is by definition unpredictable. And the
Right. Yeah.
reason that people can't answer the problem is this book here on chaos is all about describing systems in nature which are unpredictable. But there
Yeah.
is no physics in this book. That's the big problem. There's no physics at all in the book. Look, if you see how thick that book is, and we know it's all correct because it's experimentally testable. But if there's no physics in the book, that goes against tradition that one day physics will explain everything. That's the problem.
Right.
And that viewpoint is very strongly pushed by people like Brian Cox, who are whitewashing the problem, because physics doesn't explain a snowflake, a molecule, the solar system, chemistry, biology, genetics, virology, any behavior of matter which is unpredictable. So if I show you books like this, the cracks are already beginning to show. So this is A World Beyond Physics by Stuart Kauffman, in which he says and states very, very clearly that biology cannot be explained by physics because biology is by definition adaptable. Physics is by definition not adaptable. A cricket ball lands in one place. That's physics.
And that's predictable, isn't it?
That's predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. When your brain is catching a cricket ball, it does the physics. It knows where to run. When it's dealing with a human being, biology, the outcomes are not predictable because you don't know what somebody's personality is. So your brain guesses at what that human being is most likely to do. It's statistical inference. And that means if something very unusual happens, like you win the lottery, your brain gets a big shock because it's guessed that it's very unlikely that you'll win the lottery, which is true. But if you do, suddenly your brain says, I don't believe it. And that's what we all say. So I've had quite a few instances in my life where somebody's suddenly being killed that you know, and it takes you a few weeks before you actually believe it, even though the logic is crystal clear. So our brains trick us. So you must have had experiences, Darren, where you've been the same, where something unusual has happened and suddenly you can't believe it. You spend all day walking around saying, I just don't believe that's happened.
Well, what springs to mind is the meeting after the meetings with you, and I still can't believe the information that you've passed on to me. Basically, it's still blows me weeks after.
Yeah, it is. It's a few weeks, and then when you first think of it in the morning, you have to sort of shake your head, don't you, and stop and sort of say, come on, this can't be true. But that shows how bad our brains are at dealing with the truth. So I've just bought this book here. He's written it, The Trouble with Physics. This is a guy called Lee Smolin, who keeps saying, look, we've got all the right pieces of the jigsaw. Yeah, no problem, Darren. We've got all the right pieces of the jigsaw, but we're not analysing them properly. So the university departments are all correct, but we're not even thinking about the fact that they don't fit together. So what my team did, and we worked in Taiwan, and the reason we worked in Taiwan is because the Eastern people have never believed that physics was the best set of rules causing actions to happen in the universe. They believe it was mathematics. So we thought, well, let's just take that idea and see if it works. if you take mathematics as causing things to happen in the universe, does it give you a picture that puts science back together? Well, the only cause of action apart from mathematics is the fundamental forces in classical physics. That's gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. But there's a problem, because Einstein has thrown out gravity as being a force and replaced it with the geometric theory of gravity. Now, geometry, is that physics or mathematics? Well, it's mathematics. So if it's matter and space changing its geometry in each other's presence, changing matter into spheres, which is positive curves, and space into gravitational fields, which are negative curves, then gravity has positive and negative aspects, which is just not talked about in schools. But positive and negative are mathematical aspects of atoms. They're nothing to do with physics. So when you say the electron is negative, where's the physics? The physics is the amount of energy, but the mathematics is that you can only describe it as negative. Well, that's a mathematical aspect of matter. And nobody's ever thought of it like that.
Right.
But as I say it to you now, Darren, it's clear, isn't it, that atoms are positive and negative are in the maths class, not the physics class.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing something really stupid, because turbulence is explained by mathematical laws. It's explained by mathematics, which is fractal. That means it's a periodic repeating pattern.
So could this turbulence this turbulence you speak about, can it, especially in aeroplane engines, could this have explained the Concorde and the problems in the Concorde engine?
That was actually caused by some debris on the tarmac being spat up by the wheels and making a hole into the in the petrol tanks in the wings.
Right.
So that wasn't a turbulence problem. The problem with turbulence is really the tips of the blades in the fan. You have to get the tips of the blades very, very close to the inside of the engine, so you haven't got a gap there. And a gap that's even a tiny bit too big pops the engine out. So that's the problem.
Right.
And so once you've decided that mathematics is driving the universe, you can then say the mathematics of turbulence and the mathematics of laminar flow, which means the smooth flow over the wings, is self-consistent. It's explained by mathematics. And you can also then explain biology, chemistry, genetics, because genetics is all mathematical. A 1 in 4 chance of getting a red flower instead of a blue one. 50-50 chance of being male or female. But the fact is that we're not male or female, we're male and female at the same time. So again, we're thinking of it wrongly. I can be dead or alive, but I can't be dead and alive. I can be male and female at the same time. There isn't anybody who's come from a single parent. You have to come from a mix of 2 lots of genetics. But we teach in school, you're a boy or a girl, but we're all both. So we've got to start using the language correctly that describes reality. So in quantum physics, there's a cat called Schrödinger's cat. And he said, well, quantum physics must be nonsense because it can describe the cat as dead and alive at the same time. All he's done is chosen the wrong property of the cat. If it had said the cat can be a male and female at the same time, no problem.
Right.
So that solves the problem of Schrödinger's cat. And the other big problem in physics is that quantum physics and relativity are explained by different kinds of physics. Relativity is geometric. Quantum physics is arithmetic, geometry and arithmetic. But if you're saying the universe is described by mathematics, that's not a problem, Because guess what? The mathematics which described gravitational fields and magnetic fields and electrical fields is spherical harmonics. The mathematics which describes electron orbital shells in quantum mechanics is spherical harmonics. So there we are. We'll call it a day because we don't want to give people too much information at once. We want to make a record of this breakthrough in history because it only happens once, and people in the future will want to look back and see it happening live, because that's what is actually happening. Right, so I'm going to stop recording there, Dan, because that's enough for today. I think we've really got through